It's Halloween time, so I decided to talk about a darker anime for this video. While Demon Slayer is the biggest thing in Japan right now, I decided to go back in time and talk about the original demon slaying manga, Dororo. When there's a new franchise I'm interested in, the first thing I do is go to Wikipedia. Why? Well, just in case the franchise has older releases, I like to go back and start from their roots. One example I can give is Melty Blood Type Lumina, a fighting game that dropped recently. I literally went through the entire Tsukihime franchise, and I'm currently playing the older Melty Blood games that released in the early 2000s. Follow my Twitch. So needless to say, I had to do the same with Dororo. Dororo is a manga series created by the man, the myth, and the literal legend Osamu Tezuka. Did I mention he was a legend? People call him the godfather of manga. Hell, some people call him the god of manga. One title I find interesting is the Japanese equivalent of Walt Disney. This dude's work is so good, Disney copied his shit. Who's the main character of Lion King? I have to look it up real quick. Simba? Simba the lion? More like Kimba the white fucking lion. Tezuka has made many works that went on to become icons. Works like Blackjack or fucking Astro Boy. After learning this, I had an idea of what I was getting into. Some good shit. The Dororo manga was first serialized in Shogakukan's Weekly Shonen Sunday and ran from August 1967 to July 1968 before being cancelled and later concluding in Akita Shoten's Bokenos magazine in 1969. From approximately 1336 to 1573, the Ashikaga Shogunate, also known as the Muromachi Shogunate, governed over Japan. This era is known as the Muromachi period. A civil war known as the Onin War was responsible for collapsing the Ashikaga Shogunate, bringing an end to the Muromachi period and the beginning of the Sengoku period. The Sengoku period is also known as the Warring States era due to the constant civil wars being waged. Various clans and samurai warlords fought for the power vacuum left by the Ashikaga government. Due to so many factions waging war against each other, Japan was in a state of constant chaos. This is where Dororo takes place. Daigo Kagemitsu is a lord of the Ishikawa and vassal to the government of the Kaga province. Daigo is an ambitious, power-hungry man who wishes to rule over Japan. You might be wondering how desperate he was for this goal of his. Perhaps desperate enough to make a deal with the devil? No, far, far worse. This man forged a pact with a total of 48 demons. He goes to a place called the Hall of Hell. The name itself is self-explanatory. Inside the Hall of Hell are 48 statues of demons. The man knew the risk and decided to go there anyway. Usually when you make a deal with the devil, you end up gaining something in exchange for something super important. Something like your soul or your humanity. No, these demons wanted Daigo to sacrifice the eyes, nose, hands, and feet of his unborn son. Without hesitation, Daigo does just that. Enter Hyakimaru, a ronin born without any limbs or any senses. Hyakimaru's goal is to collect all of the missing body parts stolen from him by the 48 demons. Hyakimaru's body is completely prosthetic. His eyes false. Concealed under his removable arms are swords. This dude has swords for arms. Each time Hyakimaru kills one of the 48 demons, he regrows a lost part of his body. Hyakimaru ends up meeting a child by the name of Dororo, who wants to steal his sword. Although Dororo is a nuisance to Hyakimaru, they end up becoming close friends and traveling alongside each other. So, I have a few issues with this story. It's called Dororo, and yet it seems to center and focus more on the story of Hyakimaru. Not only that, but Hyakimaru is able to hold perfect conversations and interact with people as if he never lost any of his senses in the first place. I understand why this needed to be done. Having a protagonist that doesn't communicate with anyone at all would be difficult. So he has speech bubbles. The Dororo manga is definitely a product of his time. The art style is childish and wacky, like many of the early anime and manga at the time. Although that is the case, graphic violence is still present. It's kind of strange. The story seems wacky and lighthearted, yet the themes and fights are dark and filled with glorious gore that was definitely ahead of its time. In 1968, Tezuka created a 13-minute anime pilot episode for Dororo. The pilot was a summary that covers the birth of Hyakimaru, his first time meeting Dororo, and a super cut down version of the tale of the monster Bandai. This pilot episode was in full color. Due to the success of the pilot episode, the manga ended up receiving an anime series from April 6, 1969 to September 28, 1969. It ran for 26 episodes. This anime included everything that was in the pilot episode, but in a more fleshed out way. The beginning of this anime was pretty much an uncut version of the pilot episode. Of course, the pilot was only a small portion of the manga story, and the anime ended up covering more content from the manga. Unfortunately, the entire anime series is in black and white. The network airing Dororo was concerned by the dark nature of the series. To make it a bit more lighthearted, a dog named Noto was added to the story and would follow Dororo alongside Hyakimaru. Due to the story focusing on Hyakimaru more than it did Dororo, the title of the anime was changed to Dororo and Hyakimaru. Some of the episodes in this anime covered stories that weren't covered in the manga. Could Dororo be the first anime to utilize filler content? The manga was still ongoing when the first anime original episode aired. I don't know the circumstances or reasoning of these episodes, but Dororo was definitely ahead of its time in more ways than one. This is a very old anime that many would be turned off to simply because of the sight of it. I've watched every episode and was surprised at how good the story was despite its age. It wasn't an episodic anime with self-contained stories for each episode. It was a long-running storyline. Before this anime, Devilman was the oldest anime I've watched, and I found myself enjoying Dororo far more than that series. October 19th, 2018, The Legend of Dororo and Hyakimaru was published in the Champion Red magazine. This manga is a modern remake of the classic Dororo manga. All of the characters have been redesigned to take a more modernized approach to the series. By doing this, the wacky cartoonish art style was gone, giving the manga a far more mature and dark feel to the series. Because this is a modern remake, the manga still suffers from one issue. Hyakimaru is portrayed as if he has all of his senses. Again, I get it, they want the reader to know the type of person Hyakimaru is. He has a no-nonsense attitude and it shows through his interactions with other characters. This includes some pretty funny shit-talking and acting smug when it calls for it. For someone without any senses, he seems to get around pretty well and have an understanding of the world around him. As of 2021, this manga is still ongoing. January 7th, 2019, an anime adaptation by Studio Mappa was released, without changing the main plot of the story. This version of Dororo reinterprets many elements from the previous versions. In the previous interpretations, there were 48 demons in the Hall of Hell. This number was diminished to 12. I think this is a great change. Earlier I mentioned that the Dororo and Hyakimaru anime wasn't episodic and it was presented as a long-running story. Well, that is true. A lot of the demons they fight don't advance the story at all. I believe there are certain episodes you can skip and you really won't be missing much. Not that I recommend it. Daigo Kagemitsu, the father of Hyakimaru that sold his son to the demons, is a different character. In this version of the story, rather than offering his unborn son in exchange for power and rule, this version merely voices his desire to make a pact with the 12 demons in order to rule Japan as well as keep it safe, allowing for rich crops to grow across the dying land. This version of Daigo is merely trying to protect his dying country. While he doesn't offer his son to the demons end up taking Hyakimaru's body anyway. Still, Daigo accepts this, having a resolve powerful enough to cast his son's life aside for the sake of his country. This version of the Dororo story is far more darker than any previous entry. I'd even say it's darker than the 2018 manga released just a year prior. In the original Dororo anime, Hyakimaru's face is never shown after he's born. However, in both versions of the manga, Hyakimaru's face is shown. He's presented as a baby with empty eye sockets and a mouth. He kinda looks like a bowling ball. The 2019 anime shares this with both manga, but he has no skin and he's bleeding. When he breathes, we have to watch him move. I bet I'd still get a strike.
Nice cock!
Another thing I must praise MAPPA for is their darker and more realistic take on Hyakimaru's interpretation. Hyakimaru has no senses whatsoever. The demons took everything from him. What does that mean? He cannot see, hear, speak, taste, or smell. His body is prosthetic. Yet, on all previous interpretations, he does all of those despite having nothing. One thing that can be given a pass is his sense of sight. While he has no eyes, he has developed a sixth sense that allows him to see the souls of the living. By doing this, he can tell the difference between humans and demons. This is an ability that every version of Hyakimaru has. That doesn't excuse him having the abilities to utilize his other physical capabilities, despite being stated to not be in possession of any of them. So, what does MAPPA do differently? Simple. They quite literally take away his abilities to do any of the things the previous versions of Hyakimaru could. And the result? A terrifying mannequin Ronin thingy. He actually seems more like a human-sized doll that was given life through some sort of unholy possession. This direction for the character is absolutely brilliant. The studio even goes the extra mile to change his personality. The previous versions of Hyakimaru came off as a tough guy who was willing to do anything to take back what was his. He was able to express himself openly, coming off as an ordinary human. However, this version of Hyakimaru has never heard anything, has never smelled anything at all. So, as he continues to retrieve his body parts after killing demon after demon, he doesn't just become the classic Hyakimaru by regaining his senses. He can't. He's in a world that he can finally experience like everyone else. The problem is, he didn't have the chance to do so as a child and absorb the world like everyone else did. He's ignorant to the world around him and acts in a way that people in society would consider rude or disrespectful, simply out of sheer curiosity. He wants to learn more about the world using these senses he's never had before. Because of this, he might touch people's faces or even sniff them like a dog. The weirdness always eventually gets cleared up once the person realizes this guy doesn't know any better. Because this version of Hyakimaru is more childlike, his emotions are far more pure. So when he feels intense emotions like rage, he begins to resemble the demons that he's hunting instead of the demon slayer he's portrayed to be in the previous iterations of Dororo. Hyakimaru isn't the only character that benefits from this adaptation. Side characters with minor roles are given large amount of character development and backstory that wasn't present on the previous versions of Dororo, making them feel more human. Even serious villains with ties to Hyakimaru's past, who were pretty much mollywopped and bitched on the previous versions, are made into real serious threats. That and some brand new original characters makes this new take on an old classic feel refreshing. I've spent the majority of this video talking about Hyakimaru, which is funny considering that the story is called Dororo. The truth is, all previous versions of the work does tell Dororo's backstory to give you a better understanding of the character. While this is true, the story isn't about Dororo, despite Dororo being a crucial character for Hyakimaru. This new version of Dororo not only strengthens Dororo's backstory, but makes it essential for the overall plot, making this character feel more important and involved. It's going to be hard to talk about Dororo's character in depth without spoiling a massive reveal for the series. This video isn't designed to spoil you or summarize the series for you. It's to introduce you to a new anime option and let you decide if you want to give it a shot or not and experience it for yourself. Similar to the Baki videos I've made in the past. If you guys would like, I can make a separate video primarily about Dororo, the character I mean. Anyways, I respect all versions of Dororo and thank Osamu Tezuka for this masterpiece. While the flaws of the previous series make any person scratch their heads, in a weird way, I'm glad they exist. It's because they exist that we can watch this series change and evolve over time, improving a work that was already a masterpiece on their own. While I consider Studio Mappa to be the definitive version of Dororo, I recommend checking out the previous one so you can experience how ahead of its time they were and how much they evolved over time.